Hey everybody, Plushie here, and as you can see in the title, yes, Kintoki is finally dethroned. And not just slightly dethroned, but completely dethroned. And we'll get into why real quick. But of course, as most people suspected, the main reason behind that is Lilith. She is the brand new SSR single target quick berserker that was released like 2 days ago, less than 2 days ago when I'm recording this. And she also has a 50 MP battery, and her damage is higher than Kintoki. And we all know that Kintoki only does that one thing, essentially. He has been traditionally, when we ignore hitting anti-traits, the highest damaging single target in the game if he hits the Berserker class advantage, which is almost always, right? But Lilith just swooped in and took that place by actually quite a bit. Today I'm gonna be predominantly using this damage sheet that I feel like most people are super familiar with. This is the damage sheet done by Rat, and it basically only considers a servant's self buffs for a single turn. Now, this doesn't always give full context, especially for like AoE loopers that fit into a looping comp. A lot of times it is better to actually consider the full damage when you put them into a single core looping comp, but especially for single target farmers, I do think this sheet is very viable, because single target farmers usually do not fit into single core looping comps because 111 farming nodes basically don't exist. They're usually a slot into multi-core setups where they just get to MP once or twice with mostly their own buffs. So this is why I feel like I'm comfortable comparing them just on this list. A couple more things to note on this list, by the way, of course, is the fact that the damage here is going to assume Lilith landing her charm, because her anti-charm is technically a universal anti-trait, and also the damage here for berserkers are not considering the 1.5 times class advantage that they usually hit against most classes, because I guess they can technically hit neutral. So with all that out of the way, let's take a look at Lilith's damage amongst all the single target berserkers first. So here's Kintoki's damage from MP1 to MP5 with the single turn burst skill, of course, and it's pretty good. But then we take a look at Lilith, and now you realize it's not even close. Even at MP1, Lilith has about Kintoki's damage times 1.3, which is a lot more. And remember, Kintoki has an MP upgrade, so he already scales the best at MP1 compared to non-upgraded MP servants like Lilith. So when you take a look at their MP5 damage difference, it's even bigger. Lilith's damage is about Kintoki's damage times like 1.5 almost. So it's absolutely a ridiculous damage gap between these two servants. Now, I've never really explained why MP upgrades scale better at lower MP levels, so I guess I will officially explain it here. So on FGO Wiki, you can see these servants' MP damage scaling from MP1 to MP5. So as you can see here, Kintoki's MP before the MP upgrade scales from 600% to 1000%, and after the MP upgrade scales from 800% to 1200%. And what they did here is essentially adding 200% base scaling to each MP level. And when you divide the upgraded MP number at MP1, 800%, by the unupgraded MP number at MP1, 600%, you get a jump by about 1.3 times, right? But if you divide 1200%, which is the MP5 upgraded scaling, by 1000%, which is the MP5 unupgraded scaling, you only get a damage increase by 1.2 times. So this is why on these types of damage lists, sometimes you'll see a servant with an upgraded MP beat a servant without an upgraded MP at lower MP levels, but then the servant that doesn't have an MP upgrade overtakes the damage of the servant with the MP upgrade at higher MP levels, because in terms of how many times the damage increased from the MP upgrade at a lower MP level, you actually increase by more times. Anyways, that's FGO math. Let's go back to Lilith's damage. So of course, her beating Kintoki by this much is really scary because, again, this is not just, you know, beating Kintoki by a little bit, it's beating Kintoki by 30 to almost 50%, depending on the MP level. And of course, every other Berserker is going to have even less burst damage than Kintoki. MHXA has really good sustain damage because she doesn't really have that many, you know, one turn or hit based buffs. But her damage obviously loses to Kintoki, so by proxy also loses to Lilith by a lot. Cool Alter loses even more, and Artoria Caster does about half damage compared to Lilith, at least on the burst turn, because Lilith obviously only does this much damage against a charm target. But I don't think this is actually that bad because Castoria has never been about one turn burst damage. She has always been about everything else in her kit, such as consistent crits despite being an arts DPS, as well as a lot of charge and, you know, party support and party defense as well. So, you know, she is still top tier, still arguably the best single target Berserker even after Lilith, in my opinion. So I wouldn't be too upset even if the numbers make her look really bad here. And of course, you would now ask, oh, but this is, you know, Lilith is just like Kintoki. She's a one pump chump. How's her damage without the charm? Now, I actually did do the calculations for her damage without the charm, and it's still pretty good. At MP1, it certainly fell off by quite a bit, now going below Cool Alter and MHXA, but really close to Cool Alter's MP1 damage, which, again, reminder, MHXA and Cool Alter both have MP upgrades. So when you take a look at her damage at MP5, again, proving my previous, you know, MP upgrade talk correct, she actually outdamages Cool Alter and MHXA still at MP5, even without the charm, which is of course losing a major chunk of her damage already. So she just has really good MP damage in general. Her damage definitely still holds up against bosses even after the charm turn, and of course when you do take that charm into consideration, especially in farming, her damage is just through the roof, unrivaled by any single target in the game, not even close. And her charm is also basically guaranteed in farming because it's actually a 150% chance to charm. Even some of the most egregious passive combos, such as Summer Scotty's Magic Resistance EX plus her Goddess Essence A, only gives her a total of 50% debuff resistance on her passive, and Lilith can still guaranteed charm Summer Scotty. So unless you have a specific passive that makes you immune to charm like Kama, or immune to mental debuffs like Moriarty Ruler, you really can't resist Lilith's charm, especially in farming. Now, if you want to really show how ridiculous this character is, we can take a look at the all tab on this spreadsheet, which is of course comparing every single servant of every class. And again, reminder that Berserkers here don't really have that 1.5 times class advantage considered, so that's why Kintoki isn't number 1. But take a wild guess where Lilith lands on this list. Yes, still number 1. Well, she loses to Kama at MP1 because Kama has an MP upgrade, but starting at MP2 she still beats Kama, right? So this is ridiculous. Basically, if you are fighting shielders, Lilith is still going to be the highest damaging single target in the entire game. And considering how 90% of the times she's gonna have that 1.5 times class advantage, again, nobody even comes close to the amount of damage she can do in a single turn. And yes, you can use the one pump chump argument where, oh, she only has one turn of charm, but again, so many of these top tier single targets have that same problem. Abigail Williams have that 100% power mod against terrorized enemies, and terror is obviously a debuff that doesn't carry across different waves in farming. Jolter has mana burst that wears off after a single turn. Musashi also has a mana burst that wears off after a turn. Enkidu has a mana burst that wears off after a turn. And Kintoki has a 50% attack up that wears off after a single turn. So other than Kama and Melt, all of these servants have that exact same problem. And as we've shown earlier in the Berserker list, even after Lilith runs out of charm, her damage is still very good. You all know how I love to play devil's advocate, so of course I tried to find a reason to use Kintoki over Lilith in farming, because in boss fights it's just unjustifiable, right? And initially I thought, wait, there are a lot more good Buster multi-core farmers, so Kintoki might actually have better partners than Lilith. But when I actually take a look at it, that's also not the case, because as many good Buster multi-core farmers are, none of them actually buff Buster. Characters like Phantasmoon, Arcuate, and Tonalico are all fantastic multi-core farmers that don't buff any particular card type with their party buffs. Characters like Tez and Lohi straight up just are not Buster servants, but are still top tier multi-core farmers. Lohi specifically buff both Quick and Buster, so both Kintoki and Lilith are buffed equally as well, and Tez again does not buff a particular card type. The one relevant multi-core farmer that buffs Buster I can think of is Koyan Dark, who has a party-wide 30% Buster up and battery. But again, Lilith prevails here because Lilith is animal characteristic. So even though Lilith doesn't get buffed by the 30% Buster up, she gets buffed by the 30% attack up from Koyan Dark's skill 2 instead. But what's worse is that Lilith, her anti-charm, scales with overcharge. So Koyan Dark's skill 2 targeting Lilith would massively boost her MP damage for a single turn as well. So Lilith actually pairs better with Koyan Dark than Kintoki. And the final nail in the coffin is that, remember, I've only been talking about Lilith's damage when not considering specific traits. She has anti-traits. She has anti-lawful, anti-good, both 30% on her MP, and even anti-living human as a passive, only 10% though. So that's not that significant. There's absolutely no reason that I can think of to use Kintoki at all over Lilith. He's worse in boss fights, he is worse in farming, and he doesn't even have better partners than her. Now, the other question to wrap up the video is, of course, Castoria, because when you ask anyone who's the best single target berserker right now in the game is, they're gonna tell you Castoria. Castoria's damage obviously doesn't hold a candle against Lilith unless she hits specific traits, but Castoria has quite literally everything else, I would say, over Lilith. Castoria has a bigger battery because she has 50 plus 20 targetable. She has a better skill set because she has a very consistent crit skill with 5000% star absorb up and a star per turn. She actually sometimes have more consistent crits than Lilith, because Lilith, despite being quick, sometimes struggle to make 50 stars, and she has absolutely no star absorb up in her kit, and neither do any of the quick meta supports. Scotty Caster doesn't have any star absorb up. Scotty Summer only has star absorb up for Buster cards, which she unfortunately only have one of, and Kazo Drop, of course, also don't have any form of star absorb up. Castoria obviously being way more bulky than Lilith because she has better hard defense in her own kit already, 1-turn invul and solemn defense for the entire party whenever she MPs, and also she's art, so she can pair with the other Castoria compared to Lilith, which has to go for a more bursty playstyle. And finally, Castoria has very unique partners in multi-core, because even though she doesn't excel in burst damage at all, she excels in spamming her MP because she's arts, and also helping specific units because she has that targetable 20% battery as well as overcharge, so she pairs extremely well with Tonalico, for example. So Castoria definitely did not lose her edge even after Lilith comes out. They simply occupy different roles in both farming and challenge quests. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this short video. This is not the Lilith hot take. There will still be an official review hot take of her out later on, but I just wanted to glaze how ridiculous her damage is, which I don't even think I'm being too crazy about it. It's just such ridiculous damage, right? You can even settle for her at like MP1 or MP2. Her damage is already going to be super competitive against every other single target in the game. So yeah, another top tier berserker. Ridiculous, Lasengo, but I'm glad that this time it's someone that I absolutely adore.